Iran built a wall so massive most people on Earth have never heard of it. It runs 195 kilometers. It is older than the Great Wall of China. Every single brick was fired by hand. That was the year 500 AD. This is what's left today. The wall exists because of what was coming from the north. Wait, this wall is now buried under 1,000 years of dirt, and almost nobody living beside it even knows it's there. Every brick was baked in fire built by soldiers who never saw the empire fall. Now, watch what they actually built. But historians warned, if this wall had failed, the Sassanian Empire might have collapsed 2 centuries early. The 5th century AD, an empire the size of the Roman world, had one exposed border. What came next was the largest brick structure ever built by human hands. Not a wall of stone, a 195-kilometer barrier of solid fired brick, wider than a 2-lane road, every kilometer identical to the last. The nomads beyond that border, the White Huns, mounted riders who could outrun any army sent to stop them. Every general in Persia took notice. The Roman Empire's northern wall, Hadrian's, 117 kilometers, already the most famous fortification on Earth. Iran's answer, longer than that wall, and the Antonine Wall combined. And it wasn't even close. It did not fail from the front. Nomad cavalry could not climb it, could not breach it, could not outlast the garrison behind it. That is the engineering problem the wall was built to solve. One king, one order, an entire frontier secured. That decision gave the Sassanian Empire 400 years. Build it wide, build it permanent, build it out of something that would never rot, never burn, never wash away. Now you might be thinking, how do you build a 195-kilometer wall with no forest and no quarry for 1,000 kilometers in any direction? Here is the brutal truth. This wall was never built from stone because there was no stone to use. The Gorgan Plain is treeless steppe. No timber, no rock, just wind-blown soil, called loess, stretching to the horizon. Here's the crazy part. That soil turned out to be the perfect building material, if you knew how to bake it. Engineers modeled a brick before they modeled anything else. 40 centimeters by 40 centimeters by 10 centimeters, every single one, for 195 kilometers, with almost no variation. Standard size, standard weight, roughly 20 kilon each. If even one kiln fires an undersized batch, the wall's geometry breaks. Zero tolerance. Before one brick is laid, a canal has to be dug. That is the real secret of this entire structure. A ditch 5 memir deep, running the full length of the wall, engineered to follow a natural gradient, so water flows for over 100 kilometers without a single pump. 3 job functions, 1 channel. Move water to the kilns, water the garrison, slow any rider who tries to cross it. Survey teams walked the entire route first, reading the land slope by eye and by instrument, because one wrong elevation and the water simply stops moving. This step alone took years. Then came the industrial part almost nobody expects from the ancient world. Brick kilns, 1 every 37 to 86 hours for the entire 195 kilometers. That is not a rough estimate. Archaeologists have counted them. Somewhere between 3,000 and 7,000 kilns, built for one purpose only, firing brick non-stop. Near a single fort, researchers found 7 kilns packed into 220 pianors of ground. Multiply that density across the whole wall, and you get a production line stretching further than most modern highways. This wasn't hand-built. This was mass manufacturing. 100 years before the concept had a name. Every kiln needed water and fuel at the same time, in a landscape with very little of either. That's where the canal earns its keep. Feeder channels bridge the Gorgan River using qanats, underground aqueducts that Persian engineers had already perfected for irrigation centuries earlier. One surviving feeder, the Sad-e-Garkaz, still stands 700 mir long and 20 meters high today, though it once ran even farther. Divert the river, feed the canal, feed the kilns, fire the brick. Miss one link in that chain, and the entire production stops. Mix the clay. Too wet, it slumps in the mold. Too dry, it cracks in the fire. Somewhere in between is the only window that works, and it moved constantly with the weather. Fill the mold, 40 by 40 by 10, no exceptions. Stack the raw bricks to dry in open air first, because a wet brick thrown straight into a kiln explodes from trapped steam. Days of drying before a single one goes near the fire. Load the kiln. Fire it for days, not hours, at a temperature high enough to turn river silt into something closer to stone. Pull it too early, and the brick stays soft, crumbles under its own weight the first winter. Pull it too late, and you've burned fuel you didn't have to spare. Every firing cycle balanced against a fuel supply that had to be hauled in from wherever timber and brush still grew. Now move the brick. No wheeled convoy for 195 kilometers of open steppe. Every load carried or dragged to the build line, kiln by kiln, section by section. Lay the foundation course first, wide and solid, because a wall this heavy sinks unevenly into soft ground if the base isn't right. Course after course rises on top, roughly 3 meters tall. By the time it's finished, a barrier no horse can jump and no rider can climb fast enough to survive the arrows waiting on top. The wall crosses rivers. That should have been impossible with brick alone. Sassanian engineers built dams and sluices directly into the wall's path, channeling water through the barrier instead of letting the barrier stop for it. Sections of those crossings are still visible in the silt, found iron 500 years later. One continuous structure, no gaps, no weak points, where the water met the brick. Along the route, forts rise every 10 to 50 kilometers, at least 38 of them, some small watch posts, some massive barracks complexes with 4 to 6 long barrack blocks inside. Combined, their footprint is nearly 3 times the size of every fort on Hadrian's Wall put together. Estimates for the garrison run as high as 30,000 to 40,000 soldiers, stationed permanently along a single frontier. That is not a border checkpoint. That is a standing army the size of a small kingdom, fed, housed, and resupplied continuously by the same canal system that built the wall in the first place. Every fort built from the same fired brick as the wall on the outside, faster mud brick on the inside, where speed mattered more than permanence. That decision alone tells you how disciplined this construction program was. Spend the durable material where an enemy could see it. Save time everywhere the enemy couldn't. For nearly 200 years, historians could not agree on when any of this was even built. Some said Alexander the Great's era, 300 years before Christ. Others pointed to a Sassanian king 1,000 years later. The wall itself gave no signature, no inscription, nothing carved into a single brick to settle the argument. Then, in 2005, an archaeological team did something nobody had tried before. They pulled charcoal samples straight out of the kilns lining the wall. Radiocarbon dating, optically stimulated luminescence, a method that measures the last time buried. Sand grains saw sunlight. Both techniques, run independently, landed on the same window. Late 5th to 6th century AD, Sassanian, not Parthian, not Alexandrian, sourced directly from the fire that built it. That single result rewrote the wall's place in history. Built 13 centuries too early to have anything to do with Alexander. Built by an empire fighting for its northern border against the same White Huns who were shattering kingdoms across Central Asia at the same moment. The wall held. The Huns never broke through in force. The frontier stayed Persian for another 200 years. Watch what happened after that. The Sassanian Empire fell to Arab conquest around 650 AD. The garrisons walked away. The kilns went cold. And for the next 1,400 years, wind and sand did what no army ever managed. They buried it. Today, most of the 195 kilometers lies beneath farmland, hidden under a dam project, or dissolving where the Caspian Sea has crept inland over the wall's own western end. Locals living within a few hundred meters of it, in some stretches, have no idea a wall runs beneath their fields at all. No wall in the ancient world of this length has ever been forgotten this completely. Compare it to the wall everyone knows. China's Great Wall, over 21,000 kilometers across every era combined, built and rebuilt for 2,000 years. In stone, rammed earth, and brick, varying wildly section to section, depending on terrain and dynasty. Iran's wall did the opposite. One design, one material, one build window of roughly 100 years. and almost zero variation for 195 straight. Different philosophy entirely. China adapted to the land. Iran overpowered it. Some sections still stand today. Low ridges of red brick rising just above the wheat fields of Golistan province, which is exactly where the wall gets its nickname. The red snake, for the color the fired clay still carries after a millennium and a half underground. Archaeologists are still mapping kilns nobody has found yet. Satellite surveys are still tracing canal lines invisible from the ground. The full extent of what the Sassanians actually built here may still not be fully known. One empire, one frontier, 195 kilometers of fired brick, laid one course at a time by soldiers who understood something modern. Engineers still respect. Sometimes the strongest wall isn't the tallest one. It's the one built so precisely, so consistently, for so many kilometers, that an enemy never finds the seam